Hello YouTube, and welcome to this ultimate biceps exercises tier list. For those of you who are new to the concept, it's very simple. I selected 30 exercises for the biceps in particular, and I'm going to rank them from the best of the best to the worst of the worst. This is of course going to be purely subjective based on my own experience. But I am eager to hear what you guys have to say. Do you agree with my assessments or not? In terms of tiers that I selected for this video in particular, usually you rank from S to D, but I chose different names for this one. So the worst of the worst biceps exercises will be placed in what I call Noodle-tier. Noodle-tier is the tier of exercises that no matter how long you do them, you're still going to have noodle arms at the end of the day, and you should avoid these exercises. These are fairly rare, because to have a bad exercise, it usually takes some pretty hocus pocus bullshit going on, but they do exist. Then we have mediocre tier, movements I don't particularly like that you can always replace by something better in the program. Then you have decent tier, movements I'm not a big fan of, but they are just okay. Excellent tier, the ones that I do in my program, I would recommend anyone do. And then you have Arnold-tier, the God tier, the S tier. The movements that, in my opinion, if you're not doing, you're just leaving gains on the table because these are the best bicep exercises in existence. So let's get into it right away.
The first movement that I'm going to be placing today is the barbell curl. So the barbell curl is, of course, a time-tested movement. However, I personally feel like a barbell was not made with that movement in mind in particular, and therefore this one is going to be directly placed in B tier, the decent tier. It's fine, it's not the worst, but you can have some shoulder discomfort when you do it, some wrist discomfort, and therefore you can always find a better alternative. And when it comes to better alternatives, I believe that the next movement, the easy bar curl, is one because the bar was created with in mind the idea that you are going to do curls with it. So of course, it's going to be placed higher. It's going to go in the excellent tier. I recommend anyone to do curls with an easy bar. You will find that not only is it easier on the wrists, it's also easier on the shoulders because you can go with a close grip and it's much more comfortable. The bar, again, was created with that in mind. Then we have this little special friend right there, and that is the arm blaster. The arm blaster is not technically a curl, it's an implement you're going to use to do your curls. But I place it in excellent tier as well. Why? Because it's going to teach you how to curl. It forces you to do curls using your biceps, and you're going to tell me, well, that's a given, that's what you use biceps for. Yeah, but many people swing their shoulders up and down, they use way too much momentum, and the arm blaster is going to prevent that from happening. It's going to keep your elbows tight to your sides, and it's going to keep your shoulders stationary as well. So it's a great tool. Then we have this guy right there. This is the, if I am not mistaken, dumbbell preacher curl. And the dumbbell preacher curl, in my opinion, also falls in the excellent tier. I'm always going to tell you verbally what the exercises are because I understand that these small icons can be a little bit confusing. But I'm also going to include the image of the exercise if I can so that you know exactly what we're talking about. So this one is with a dumbbell on the preacher curl. I like this exercise because, again, you cannot cheat unless you're a complete idiot. Keeps the elbow stationary, keeps the shoulder stationary, and you can focus on the stretch. You can control the range of motion. There is no swinging. So it's a very good isolation movement for the bicep. This is typically what is going to make a good or a bad bicep exercise. It's how much of the bicep you're actually going to use in comparison to the rest of the body. After that, we have the preacher curl again, but with an easy curl bar. And this is going to be our first Arnold-tier exercise. This is a God tier exercise. The issue I have with dumbbells and preacher curls is that you will find that because one side of the body is working at a time, there's going to be a certain ability to sort of lean into the movement, which can help with the cheating. And also I have found that when your two hands are placed on the bar at the same time, it is going to help you stretch the bicep equally amongst both arms. You could find or say or believe that a preacher curl is going to have a better chance and shot at helping to alleviate imbalances between biceps, but you could also end up reinforcing the imbalance because the strongest and biggest arm is going to be able to lift more load for more reps. Whereas the easy bar curl is going to immediately tell you which of the arm is the weakest because it's the one that is going to start to tire first. And then you can just re-equilibrate, modify your grip, and make sure that both hands and both biceps do as much work. I also find that because you use an easy bar, it's easier to wrap your hand around the bar and you get a much better forearm exercise. So if you have never done an easy bar curl on a preacher curl before, please go give it a shot. You are going to love it. After that, we're going to have a controversial entry because I know that many people absolutely love this exercise, but I personally don't like it at all. And this is why I put it in mediocre tier, and that is the incline curl. For some reason, I see many people use it in their program, sometimes even as their one and only bicep exercise. To me, that makes absolutely no sense. This is a third or fourth bicep exercise on your list. It should never be given priority because it truly is subpar. Let me tell you why I think this is bad. I think it's bad because people do it thinking they're going to get an immense stretch, but what they don't realize is that the position of their shoulders when they do the movement prevents that from occurring because their shoulders move up and down. While it's not technically a bad thing, it assists with the lift. So now you end up moving baby weight because most people use very little weight on this movement for a reason, it's because it's dangerous. And on top of that, you are not really fully extending the arm, and the full weight of the dumbbell is not exactly where you want it to be. And it's also a question of fatigue. Anyone who has done incline curls knows that from one rep to the other, you lose all of your strength. So the ninth rep is perfectly easy, and then the 10th rep is almost impossible. Why? It's because the strength curve is all over the place. I also think that this is not a good thing. You want exercises you can grind on with a safe motion. An easy bar preacher curl, for example, up there, allows you to do that, not an incline curl. If you want to grind an incline curl, what are you going to do? You're going to start to raise your elbows, you're going to start to raise your shoulders to assist with the movement. So it's, in a sense, it's a bodybuilding exercise that puts you in a disadvantageous position for no payback. I really encourage you to look for better alternatives, and we're going to get to better alternatives because this is definitely mediocre tier. Then we have the cable curls. The cable curls I placed in excellent tier as well. Very good tension throughout the movement, a different type of tension that you would get with free weights. You also have to control the negative as the stack is pulling you downwards.
It's less stretch than free weights, but it's still there. I think that, of course, the strength of the cable curl is going to be the positive. You resist the movement, the tension of the cable is present throughout the positive, and it never really alleviates. Whereas with a barbell, for example, the higher you go, the more gravity alleviates, the less stress there is on the bicep, and therefore the contraction at the top is pretty shitty. Whereas here you can get peak contraction. So cable curls ranks fairly high. Then we have the cheat barbell curl. And the cheat barbell curl is the first movement that is going to end up in Noodle-tier because it is definitely garbage. I know that some people swear by it because Arnold used to do it. Look, even though the God tier is called Arnold-tier, it does not mean that the guy knew everything and that all of the exercises he did were good. This one, skip, it's absolutely useless. The issue with the cheat barbell curl is that you're just going to end up doing a supinated clean. You're just going to swing your hips into that barbell and you're going to do 3/4 of the range of motion using the momentum of your hips and your legs. There is absolutely no point. The only thing that can really be pointed out that can be beneficial for the bicep in particular with that movement is the negative, and I see many people don't even do the negative, so there's no point. If you want the negative, do a preacher curl. It's so much safer. This is definitely not the type of movement that is going to build big arms. And then we have the little brother, the cheat dumbbell curl, that I'm placing in mediocre tier because it's not as bad. The reason for it being that it's harder to clean the weight up with a dumbbell curl because you go one at a time. Even if you do two at a time, you cannot push or press your hips into the barbell. So it's going to be mostly biceps. This is why it ranks higher, but it's still not a movement I would recommend. And I speak as someone who did cheat curls for 10 years. I did tens of thousands of reps of cheat curls, and I'm still telling you it's not a good exercise. So ditch it, do something else instead. But something else that, for example, could be a ring curl that is going to go in decent tier. This is a good movement, especially if you're a novice, if you're a noob, you're going to be able to feel your biceps in a different way. And on top of that, it's very easy to adjust the difficulty of the movement. You just have to adjust the angle of the torso. The more vertical the torso, the easier the movement is. The more horizontal, the harder the torso is, the harder the movement is, and the more stress on the bicep. There is a risk of bicep injury on this because you use your body weight, and if you're a bit too eager, you could overextend the bicep muscle and actually tear something, so be careful with that. But beyond that, if you're not a complete idiot, it's a good movement. The issue being that it's going to be tough to progressively overload on it, and at some point, it's not going to be enough for the biceps. I would say that this is a good movement to finish the day. The only problem also being that if you are not careful, you could end up using your back. I see many people do pretty much ring curls when they do ring rows, when they do ring curls, and that is not the point of the movement. After this, we have another ring movement, which is the Pelican Curls. And the Pelican Curls earned their place in excellent tier. This is a crazy movement for the bicep. The stretch is immense. The arm is way behind you, so you have to stabilize the shoulder joint on top of, again, having to pull yourself back in with the bicep alone. The issue with that movement, and this is why it didn't go in Arnold-tier, is that you have to be very advanced to do them. And it is so advanced, in fact, that I know people who had to cut weight to be able to do them. So you want to gain muscle and size, so you pick this exercise, but this exercise forces you to lose weight to be able to be performed. So maybe your biceps will grow, but you will lose size overall. Some people might be ready to sacrifice mass for this. I personally am not. It takes way too much technicality and specificity to be able to run it. But once you can run it, just take one look at the biceps of gymnasts. It is incredibly potent. Then we have the spider curls. I told you earlier that the incline curl was shit. It's mediocre. And it's mediocre because it's everything the spider curl is without actually managing, which is why the spider curl goes in Arnold-tier. A spider curl is a movement that quote-unquote resembles a preacher curl but is done differently in that your shoulders and elbows are not stationary because you're dangling from a bench. Usually it's also going to be an inclined bench, but the difference is that you lay on the bench and your arms are quote-unquote floating. And from that particular position, you do your curls. The reason why it is so much superior to the incline curl is because you can grind it. The position of the shoulder and the arm is much better suited to the development of the bicep. And on top of that, it has a tendency to help alleviate tendinitis for the same reasons, whereas the incline curl has a tendency to create tendinitis. There is still a possibility to hurt yourself on the spider curl, but essentially what a spider curl is a preacher curl that you can go full range of motion on. So it has to earn the rank of Arnold-tier. It is a crazy good exercise. If you guys have never done it, please give it a try. In your training, you're not going to regret. Then we have another controversial entry with the chin-up. The chin-up that, in my opinion, has to rank C. I put it in C tier, mediocre tier, because this is a bicep exercises tier list. If it was for back, it would go in S or A tier. But for biceps, it is highly overhyped. I don't know many people who build big biceps off of chin-ups alone, and the few people that I know who actually like to brag about that don't have that big of biceps to start with. Their backs tend to overpower their biceps, and that's for a simple reason. The chin-up is a back exercise. It's not a bicep exercise. Look at the angle of the elbow and of the arm again. It's if you want to judge a bicep exercise, that's what you have to look at. Don't just think, okay, the bicep works. A curl does this, a chin-up does this. You understand that there's going to be a big difference in activation. And most of the EMG data I saw about chin-ups that claim it activates the biceps tremendously are flawed in nature. Do not do chin-ups to grow your biceps. It can be a good addition, but it will never replace curls ever. Then we have even worse, the one-arm chin-up. The one-arm chin-up that goes directly in Noodle-tier, D tier. This is a terrible exercise for the biceps because you don't really use the biceps. Just look at the way most people do their one arm chin up. They're halfway twisted, their body is not facing the bar. They sometimes use a second hand, which is cheating. They use momentum, they use their legs. This is not a bicep exercise. Best case scenario, you can tell me that the negative is going to tax the bicep, but you could do so many other things that are much better. On top of that, look at the skill cap necessary to be able to do that. A Pelican Curl, I will give an A because even though you have to be crazy advanced in calisthenics, it's still going to destroy your biceps. But this, it's bad for biceps and you have to be 150 pounds to pull it off. And on top of that, it's not going to tax the bicep that much. So why would you even try that? It's not needed. Just don't do that exercise for the biceps. Then we have the hammer curls. I might shock some of you guys, but to me, the hammer curl is simply decent. It's not that great for biceps. It is excellent for forearms, but for biceps, there are better movement. On top of that, some people get shoulder pain from hammer curls. The ankle is not necessarily super good for the biceps. On top of that, when you control the negative down, most of what you're going to get is here, you're going to get forearm. It's going to get you some arm work, but there are better alternatives out there. And talking about better alternative, the next one is the Pinwheel Curl. And the Pinwheel Curl earned itself a place in excellent tier because it's again everything that the hammer curl wants to be, but is not. This time you're going to do the movement inside of the body instead of outside. That is going to recruit much more arm, especially the outer arm, the brachioradialis, and the upper portion of the bicep that many people want to recruit, want to develop, but for some reason seemingly cannot find exercises to fit or to target. This is one. I never see anyone do that exercise for some reason. Everyone does hammer curls and no one does pinwheel curls. I absolutely give pinwheel curls a try. I personally have been doing them for years and years, and they are a great exercise. After this, we are going to take a look at the behind the back cable curl. And for the same reason I gave the Pelican Curl a good grade, I'm going to give this one an excellent grade as well, because this one lands directly in Arnold-tier. Why? It's the Pelican Curl without the skill curve. You don't need to be good at calisthenics, you're not dangling from your own arms and holding your body weight, you're just standing there. But you're doing curls behind the body with a cable, meaning that you get a full stretch and a full contraction. This is a great exercise. Do not attempt to do that with dumbbells because, of course, the strength curve and the tension is completely different. So you'll just end up swinging your curls instead and you might actually get injured. The tension of the cable makes it so that it's not risky for the bicep at all because you're not going to use crazy weights for that. It's an isolation movement. Anyone can do them. You can do them as secondary or third exercises for the bicep. It's a great way to finish the bicep and to really feel that stretch. Next, we have something a little bit special, and that is arm wrestling style curls. So this englobates everything. The cheat curls, the movements on the preacher with the torso that moves back and forth, everything that they do with cables, with towels, it's all contained within that one icon. And this goes straight in decent tier. Arm wrestlers have great biceps, and if you look at the arms, actually they have gigantic biceps and no triceps at all. Their forearms are of course much better, but if you look at the way they train them in a way so as to be better for their sport. So the size of their bicep is a byproduct. It's like gymnastic rings. The issue with this is that I have found that many of these movements, their limiting factor is not the bicep, it's the wrist. It's your ability to keep a straight wrist and to not let the wrist flex or get out of position. That of course is great for their sport because when you battle another man, if they break your wrist, the fight is over and you lost. Whereas for you, if you're a bodybuilder, it's not really a concern of yours. So they're fun to do, but if you just specialize in this, you're going to just become better at arm wrestling and your biceps might not necessarily get as big as you would want them to be. Then we have the complete opposite, which is an old school bodybuilding movement, the concentration curl that ranks A, excellent tier. Great movement, you can do it inside the body, outside the body. I prefer outside the body because of shoulder issues I have when I swing it inside. You can do them standing. Arnold used to do them standing, sitting. This is again a great movement to feel the stretch of the bicep. It's easy to control. So as opposed to an incline curl, for example, the issue with the incline curl is that the arm just swing back and then it is being brought back up by the elasticity of the tendon. And I see many people who play that game where they just rebound like this. With a concentration curl, you won't be able to do that because your elbow is on a pad that your leg creates. So now you're going to go like this and you're going to go back up without rebounding. You should be able to control the negative at the bottom.
On top of that, you can grind that exercise absolutely, and you can even do half reps at the bottom with absolutely no risk. So this is a great exercise. If you want a stretching exercise for the bicep, I recommend you do that one. Then we have seated dumbbell curls. So in the same line, this one can only go to decent tier because it's not as cheaty and as potentially useless as the incline curl because you're standing more upright. So you get technically less stretch. But I have found that if you do it alternatively with one arm at a time, it tends to be a good way to isolate the bicep. That being said, I also see many people who think that because they're sitting down, they cannot possibly cheat, so it's superior to standing dumbbell curls. That is a mistake because most people who cheat on their dumbbell curls, they don't cheat with their legs. They cheat with their upper body. They do this. They swing the shoulder up and down and they lift the elbow. Sitting down is not going to prevent you from doing that. If anything, you're going to do it more because you're going to think, oh, well, I'm not cheating. And so you do that movement, you start to heave up and down. And I see a ton of people who do that. So decent movement, but to be honest with you guys, there are much better ways to train the bicep than this. If you want isolation, look at all of the exercises in Excellent-tier and Arnold-tier that are done on a preacher or on a bench. They're all superior to seated dumbbell curls. Then we have machine curls. This is a good example of what I just described. A machine curl ranks directly in A tier. Why? Your shoulder and elbow are stationary. You have a pad to place your elbow. And you have the stretching component of the machine with a controlled range of motion and a controlled squeeze as well. Can this injure you? Yes, if the machine is garbage and if you overextend the arm. But if you know what you're doing, again, this is the equivalent of a dumbbell preacher curl. I would even go as far as to say it's better because of the additional tension. And I'm this close to putting it in Arnold-tier, but my issue is that most of the machines are not good enough, and because the machine is made for one individual in particular, it might not be best adapted to you, whereas something like a spider curl or an easy bar preacher curl, regardless of who you are, you're going to be able to modify the grip, the width, the placement of the elbows, etc., etc. So it's of course going to be superior. Then we have another exercise that is going to land directly in Noodle-tier, and that is the waiter curl. Straight up with you guys, I have never seen anyone in a gym do that exercise, and I think it's because I actually don't go to clown gyms with a bunch of TikTok bros and Instagram bros. I went to real gym, and then I got my own gym. I think that if you go to an old school bodybuilding gym and you do waiter curls, some like 300-pound freak is going to come up from behind you, grab you by the collar, and kick you out. This is a clown exercise. The gym is not a circus. This is bullshit, okay? Just look at the type of people who promoted that exercise and you'll quickly understand that it is garbage. Every time I see someone do that in a video, it's either someone with no muscle and biceps or someone who's on drugs. There's a reason for that. This is not a movement that respects the anatomy of the bicep. It's a cramped position where you're like this. You end up uncomfortable because the dumbbell was not made for you to put your hands on it. The squeeze is garbage because you can't go all the way down. The dumbbell is going to run into your chest. You can't go all the way down either because, again, of the cramped position. You can't open the arms all the way. It is terrible. Honestly, if someone wanted to come up with a practical joke to troll bodybuilders, they would have come up with this. Do not do that. It's a horrible exercise. Then in the list of people who came up with things they thought were good and ended up being bad, we have the wall curl. The wall curl is a guy one day who said, hey, you know what? I want bigger biceps, but the issue is that when I stand up doing curls, I cheat and therefore I don't recruit the bicep maximally. What can I do? Well, the guy placed his back on the wall and he said, you know what? This prevents me from cheating. I'm going to do that now. The issue is that it also prevents you from moving normally. When you do curls, it's absolutely normal that your elbows travel back a bit, up a bit, same for the shoulders. As long as it's not exaggerated, you are all good. The problem is that this doesn't solve anything because you can still push off of the wall with your elbows, which is why, again, controversial take, people who run easy bar curl competitions, strict curl competitions that have their athletes do their curls off of a wall, that's not strict. You can cheat. You can push off of the wall with your legs. You can push and have a support with the back of the elbows and push off of the wall. And when you grind the curl, you can just shift the body weight on the top of your upper back and lay into the wall so as to be able to curl more. I guarantee you that all of these guys who curl 200 pounds with a wall, you put them standing upwards and they have to stay rigid by themselves. They can't curl as much. This is, again, a bad idea. Don't do that. I know that, again, until you try it and until you actually have thought about it for a second or two, it sounds like a good idea, but it's like a seated curl. It's not an actual good idea. Don't do that. Then we have straight arm work. So it's whatever you're going to do with straight arms. And this one is like arm wrestling work. I have to put it in decent tier simply because of the crazy biceps that gymnasts get. It's an absolute truth that the bicep in a stretch position, when it has to mobilize and to keep the shoulder in place, is going to grow. That is the truth. You don't have to actually go through the motion. That being said, again, these tend to be men who are lighter and they spend their entire life doing that. For you, who's just a gym rat, it's not needed. You don't need to get to that skill level to get big biceps. Just do your curls. But again, for the sheer size of the biceps of these guys, I have to put some respect on their practice, and therefore I'm giving them a B tier. Now we have the crucifix curl again. A movement that you only see people with no muscles or people on steroids doing, and that's for a simple reason. It looks good, but it's actually garbage. Look at the position. You're like this. Does that look like a comfortable position to do bicep curls? It's not. It's for a reason. You do that because you're an egomaniac and you want everyone to look at you as you do your curls. On top of that, you take 2 cable stations for a shitty exercise that could be best replaced by a single arm dumbbell curl. You are an absolute cunt. Do not do that. The stretch is not as potent as you would think because of the position of the shoulder.
The squeeze is okay, but there are other cable exercises that are better done. You do 2 arms at a time, so you're not actually focused. You have to hold the pose, so you're more focused on holding the pose and keeping the shoulders stationary than actually working the curl. Waste of time entirely. It doesn't end up in Noodle-tier because it's still a cable exercise with a good stretch, but I'm that close to putting it there. After this, we have the close grip easy bar curl. And this one, of course, I messed up the disposition of the thingy. Yes, it's this guy right there with no muscles at all. But I'm still going to place it in Arnold-tier for the simple reason that in the hierarchy of curls with a barbell, you have barbell curls, easy bar curls, so B and A tier, and then you have the absolute god tier way to do your curls, and that is with a close grip on an easy bar. You can do them for range of motion with shoulder movement at the top. You can do them like an arm blaster with your arms placed like this and you go like this, which is something that I personally favor. There's a million ways to actually approach this exercise, but I find it is tremendous for the bicep. You can grind like crazy. It is definitely safe if you know what you're doing. So king of the barbell curls right there, it deserves its spot in S tier. Then we have band curls, and the band curls are right there, and I put them also directly in C tier, so it's mediocre tier. Now, this one is a C tier because you're not going to build much muscle off of it. I personally do them more for recovery, since I have a tendency to do partial ranges of motion where I never fully extend the arm on biceps, and it might not be the best idea for the health of your elbows and your bicep tendons. So once in a while, it's good to overextend the arm. But if you're going to overextend the arm, you want the strength curve to prioritize the top of the movement and deload at the bottom of the movement so as to keep the arm safe. And what do you use in that case? Use a cable, or you're going to use something like a band if you don't have cables. And with the band curls, the elastic band curls, this is exactly what you get. So good movement for the end of the training session if you do chin-ups, for example, but absolutely not something you're going to build muscle with, which is why, since this is a bicep builder tier list, I cannot rank it higher than C tier. Then we have right now on my list the occluded curls. And it's as expected all over the fucking place because I have other things that are on my list but I forgot. So we're going to start with that and then we're going to see what I forgot. So the occluded curls, well, I placed these also in mediocre tier. Again, if you look up an exercise and you see that it's promoted by a bunch of people on roids, it's for a reason. It's because it's a gimmick. Yes, it can help you grow your bicep. I'm sure there is a study by some guy who lives in Venezuela who has proven that you're going to get 20 inches arms off of it. Not for you. Why? Because you most likely have skinny arms. You're not there yet. Even if occlusion curls are good, it's only for like the few people who are at the very limit of their natural peak, even though that doesn't actually exist, and who want to spice it up. Most of it is sensations. It's because you feel your bicep being gorged with blood. I'm not certain it actually does something. Some people say it does. I personally don't use them, and I have huge biceps. So absolutely up to you. But if I were to actually tell you which exercises to prioritize, I would never actually make you grab that exercise and put that in your training. Always do the things that are on top. Occlusion curls tend to be a meme for the most part. And then oh yes, I know exactly what this one is. It's just that I'm an asshole. I just skipped some of them. So this one right there is the drag curl. For people who don't know what a drag curl is, it's a curl where you don't have you're supposed to not move the elbow. So what you're doing is you're moving the bar up and down, which is why it's supposed to be a drag curl. It drags up your abs and it's supposed to stop here. You're not supposed to go up to your chest, although maybe some people can go a little bit higher if they have longer arms. For me, this movement is typically something that I would place in decent tier. It's not horrible, but it's not something I see many people do, and it's for a good reason. It's because it's boring as fuck. It really is. On top of that, it's not comfortable. It's not necessarily painful, but it's just not nice to feel the bar just crawl up your abs like this. I personally have done them in the past. It never stuck because I always found that there were better ways to train the bicep. It's not horrible, but there is a reason why these are not very popular with people. Then we have the together curl. And the together curl is in between. It's in between decent tier and mediocre tier. Now, for the sake of peace and harmony, I'm going to put it in decent tier. But understand one thing. When you do your curls 2 arms at a time, you have a much higher tendency to swing. That's only natural. And the issue is that when you swing 1 arm at a time, it's one part of the body that moves. So usually what you do is you clean the hips with the dumbbell. When you do it with 2 arms at a time, you tend to put your hips into it. And I've seen people do that. If your hips move when you do curls with 2 arms, you're cheating. That's not a strict curl. On top of that, it's better to do 1 arm at a time because you can actually focus on the arm. Likewise, if you have an imbalance of the arm and you do 2 arms at a time, guess what? The imbalance is going to be perpetuated because you're moving the same weight with the 2 arms, unless you're going to use a discrepancy in weight in between the 2 dumbbells, which would be weird. So decent, but I'm this close again to put it in mediocre tier. Then we have the high cable bicep curl. And the high cable bicep curl is also going to rank in excellent tier because it's like a cable curl, but you do them with your elbows up like this, and therefore it's going to prioritize the outside of the bicep more. There is a problem with people doing cable curls who do this, and I see that all the time. The problem is that now they take 2 things that separated are good, and when you put them together, they're bad. They go in mediocre tier because now you're using your shoulders to move the weight. You understand that if you do cable curls here or here, the shoulders have just a stationary role. They don't move the weight because they're not actually moving. But if you do this, look at the shoulders. You're doing an elevation for the shoulders. The bicep is deprioritized because the shoulder is a much stronger muscle group. So separated good movements together, bad movements. Don't make that mistake. By itself, this movement right there is excellent. My only issue is that it's not as good as a close grip easy bar curl because the stretch in this position here is not going to be as severe because you're never going to fully extend the arm. It is too dangerous. Even with baby weight, you're going to develop tendonitis. So it's not a good call. And then finally, we reach our last exercise, and it's the pretty classic basic standing dumbbell curl. And this one goes straight into excellent tier. If you're going to start training biceps, this is your exercise. This is what everyone needs to start with. None of that complicated bullshit with cables or whatever. You start with the basics and then you go from there. And that is sort of the mindset I have with this tier list as well. Noodle-tier exercises, ignore absolutely their garbage. Mediocre tier, if you have a connection with them, you can do them, but I always recommend you try something else instead that is in the higher tier. And then from decent tier to Arnold-tier, you have good exercises. I understand that there are no good or bad exercises, but in my opinion, if you stick to the ones in Arnold-tier and excellent tier, you're good. That's plenty of things you can do. That's 10. Some of them, like the Pelican Curl, you will not be doing, so it even reduces the amount of movements you can add to your arsenal. These are the top ones. These are the ones that are going to build big biceps, that are safe, that you're going to have fun doing for years and years and years. The ones underneath, in decent tier, you can add to spice it up or to finish the day, but they're not that great, and then the rest just ignore altogether because they're simply not worth your time. And that is that for this ultimate bicep exercises tier list. Let me know what you guys think about it. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree. I'm personally certain that all of you are going to be disagreeing with me about the incline curls, but this is something that I'm always happy to discuss with you. Might even make a video about it at some point. And if you like this format, I will happily do more because I love being a judgmental prick and I have very strong opinions on certain lifts. If you want one muscle group in particular, let me know in the comments, and the muscle group that got the most comments, I will be making the next tier list about. And that is going to be about it for today. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.